Okay, so let's start the second presentation for today. We are a bit shifting with the agenda, but we will have a second presentation now and a longer break after this one, and a longer break with pizza. For your information, the opened receipt on the bar is now closed, so you have to get your beers on your own. I hope that's not a problem for you, but we've got enough. And after this talk, we'll have a pizza break, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, something around that, and then a lightning talks. I think we have 4 at the moment. If anyone else would like to have a lightning talk, just grab me anywhere in the break and let me know. And for those who were there on the beginning of the meeting and would like the Python licenses, also grab me anywhere in the break and I'll get your emails. And now we're getting to the second presentation today. That's about the CPython bugs by Disconnected. A great hacker called Capture the Flag player, helper with all of the meetups since I don't know when, like a very long time. And I think that basically you probably have listened to at least one of his talks, so I'm just giving the microphone back to him and enjoy the talk.
Yeah, so I'm Disconnected and I'm going to talk about CPython bugs. So the talk was called CPython bugs review. It's not necessarily a review, but we'll look through some of the bugs that are reported there, and we'll see like their impact and stuff like that. Actually, Gandhi told a few words about me. I can say a few more. I work as a security engineer at Bits, and I play CTS in this justCatTheFish team. I also have a blog at disconnected.pl, but it's not very active, but I'm probably going to write something there. I'm going to ask with a quick question first. So, has anyone bought this or read any article in it?
In this one particular? Or?
Yeah, in this particular one. Okay, nobody. That's good, because this talk is based on an article I have written into this Programmista magazine, which you can buy at Empik or probably elsewhere as well. And it's mainly about the bugs that are already reported there on bugs.python.org. The second question here: has anyone visited it at least once? I did. Raise your hand, please. Anyone? Really?
In the past, but not now.
In the past, one person. Okay. That's terrific. Like, you're coding in Python and you don't really care about the bugs that are there. Maybe you didn't trigger them, or maybe you did, but you don't know. But there are a lot of them, actually. And if you go to this website, you will see something like this, where you have like just some kind of table with latest, with bugs with latest activity. And it's basically similar to a GitHub issue tracker. But it's probably better in those terms that it's not necessarily controlled by GitHub, right? I mean, the Python Foundation controls it, and they have all the knowledge that is necessary here. And it was there probably even before GitHub and stuff like that. And you can also search here for like bugs related to security or performance or anything. And if you trigger some Python bug or think you triggered the Python bug, you should probably report it here. There is a disclaimer: if you find something that's a security-related bug, you should probably report it to like security at something. You should find the link somewhere there, because if that's something that may be exploited by someone, it's not necessarily good to publish it directly. Here are some stats from the CPython bug tracker. It's like on the x-axis you can see like a week by week statistics of open and closed issues. So there's like a lot of stuff going on there, and it's impossible to catch up with all of this. Even if you would like to track all the security-related stuff or performance or any other category, you would probably not be able to do so nicely, I would say. But you can at least go through this. Okay, and we will be going here through some of the bugs that either I encountered or found there already, being reported there, and I found them interesting enough to like speak about them. So the first bug that is there is about a readline module, which is being loaded in interactive mode. And it's there on this link. It can be triggered on Python, both Python 2 and Python 3. It was reported in 2011. It's still not fixed. And we will look into how it works. So some people may think it's a feature, but it's probably not. Let me maybe focus on that. It will probably be more visible here. So I have got here 2 files, actually 3, but let's ignore the a.py for now. We have a make file. We have a fake readline.c, and yeah. So let's look at the make file. By the way, Pat is a better cut. You can install it from GitHub. So in this make file, we have this all find and install. Let's ignore the find and install for now. But in this all, now if we invoke make, it will invoke this line here. So it will basically compile this .c file here as a shared library, which can be loaded by C programs or even Python, as you will see. And we compile it into a file called readline.so. So if we execute it right now, we can see that readline.so has appeared here. And what was it compiled from? So if we look at this fake readline.c, we can see it's a very short C file, which just includes one input here in order to be able to print, and then creates a void init function that's static and it's marked as a constructor. So this is something that this is a magic incantation where we can say to the compiler, please execute this function whenever the library that we will build this file into is loaded. So whenever this readline.so is loaded, it puts hacked. This hack will be printed to standard output. And what it means here, if Python would execute this, now if I launch the interpreter or something like this, that's probably bad, right? Because this means that, I just want to launch a Python interpreter like this, and it actually executed this code. I will maybe scroll this up so everyone can see it. So, is this actually a problem?
I don't think so.
Okay, you don't think so. Why?
Because you are executing Python in the directory where you have some malicious library which you just built.
Sure, but would you expect Python to import some random library if it's there? Like, if that would not be called readline.so, it would not be imported here.
Yeah, just like Windows NT, import everything from the local directory.
Yeah, like with DLLs on Windows, right?
Yeah.
But you wouldn't expect that to be here on Linux. And so,
well, I would.
Okay, maybe you would, but I personally wouldn't.
Actually, I oppose the statement because if you use for PyEnvs or environments, so if this particular .o file exists in that particular location, you're gone. So in that, means like .o, if I have to remove all the files, so your system is crashed.
Yeah.
So because it means like here in the terminal you're triggering Python, but if you're using PyEnvs, internally it converts into another command and then it runs for Python. So yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to show it, but apparently I may not have virtual env here for some reason. I think I had it, but I don't. Whatever. I might have uninstalled it. Maybe I am in a. I'm not. Never mind. Yeah. So this can be a problem if you would actually be an admin. You would log in into your server where you have some kind of directory with downloaded files. And one of those downloaded files would be readline.so, like uploaded by someone. And then you would execute Python because maybe you want to do some processing over some files or any scripting, like in an interpreter. And then this readline.so would be loaded by the Python interpreter. And this is not cool because you would probably not expect that to happen, but it's happening. By the way, to counter that, if you would execute a script here, this hack is not printed. There's the payload delivered, but ignore it for now. I will probably maybe do this for now to remove this. Yeah, like that. Yeah, so if I execute it once again, there is no hacked print, but if I execute a Python interpreter, it's there. If I execute Python 2, it's also there. And it's, at least for me, it's unexpected. So yeah, I have those slides that are basically displaying what I showed you already. Oh, well, another problem could be if you would execute a Python interpreter programmatically in this directory, but I guess nobody does that, at least I hope so, because that would be stupid.
Is it just about read line?
No, and that's what we...
Everyone.
It's not about every library. There are some that works, some that doesn't. And so if you want to find out, or, well, not necessarily find out those that work out, but if you want to find out all the libraries that Python loads during startup, you can use this another incantation I have in Makefile, which is this strace here. So strace is a program on Linux where you can trace Linux syscalls. Those are like calls to the kernel API. And there is this open@at syscall, which is executed by Python whenever it loads a library. So we will strace the Python process. We will forward all its errors into stdout, and then we will grab it through the .so output. So if I execute makefind now, it will basically call this strace Python, grabbing by the so, and we can see all this library that are loaded here. And yeah, we can see also that the readline so was loaded here, right? Now, if we would execute some code here, like whatever, I have written blah, 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 like ASD, and then hit enter, we can see that a lot more packages were loaded by the Python interpreter. Like, it makes sense. It doesn't, because it doesn't make sense to load all the libraries until you actually need them. So it's kind of delaying it, probably as some kind of like performance reasons. And actually, if you would try this like readline SO trick with, like, for example, libgcc, it would not work. But there are libraries with whom it would work, and those are those like that are present in this libdynload. So, for example, this bz2, lzma, hashlib, ssl, or JSON. And those here have a very weird name because it's like ssl _ssl .cpython with the version, with the architecture I'm running on, and then .so. And yeah, this readline could also have this suffix here, but it's not necessary. So for example, I can get out of this strace, and I can do something like this. I can move this readline into _JSON SO. So there's no readline SO anymore. And if we execute Python right now, it didn't execute our payload, right? But I don't need to import JSON. I told you I have written whatever here and hit enter. And now it loaded those libraries, so it also loaded _JSON.so. And that's how it was executed. By the way, I guess that import JSON, I wonder if it works right now. Actually, it seems it works. So that's weird what happened here. That's something to be investigated because I didn't really look at it that much. So yeah, as I showed you, we can also use strace and see like that the readline is loaded, that some other libraries are loaded that can have the same semantics as this readline here. Yeah. So what can we do about this? Yeah, you have a question?
Loading some random SO file from the place that you fire into Python with
When does it make sense?
Yeah, because
That's a good question, and I don't know.
Because when I saw the traces, most of them were loading from some standard packages and stuff like that, and this one was the only one that was loaded from the place when you fired the screen.
So I can maybe give some more context. Readline SO is a library written in C, obviously, that is basically used for supporting things like interactive shell, like this arrow up and arrow down I'm like hitting right now, which shows this A equals 1 or disappears it. It's a readline library that is doing this. Actually, it's a good question. Oh, it works probably because I don't have this readline SO. file. So if I wouldn't have this readline SO that we can see on the screen, it would actually load it from this like user lib Python 3.6 blah blah blah. But if you have this library in your current working directory when you execute Python, it loads it from this directory. Why? That's a good question. I don't really know why it's done this way. We can maybe see how it's executed in CPython code in a second. But I personally believe it shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't.
Python, or is it like LD preload stuff?
It's very likely it's about preload, LD preload in
Because it looks
or
like
DL open in.
Yeah.
But you know, you could. Well, when you're executing Python, most likely the interpreter itself knows where are the libraries. Like I'm pretty sure it knows about the.
You know, for every binary you have this LDSO loader.
Yeah, if it's not a statically linked binary.
Is it LDSO that is loading these libraries, or is it Python? Because if it's
It's probably LDSO,
yeah,
but
so it's not a Python problem.
But the question is, if it's LDSO, why do they pass not an absolute path to it?
Where? To LDSO? I think it's
okay.
kind of a system problem, yeah?
Okay, I get your point now. I get your point. But readline SO is most likely called by DL open. I'm not sure, but I think so. We could look it up after the talk because I don't have it here. But anyway, we can see here code from the CPython code base where this import of readline is happening, not the other libraries, because I haven't checked where they occur, but this is the readline import. So we can see here a function called pymain import readline. So that's executed somewhere in like the main function of Python. And we can see here this like pyimport import module readline. So I think probably the issue here is that this import module function here, it's not really using like the user lib path. It's just trying to find this library in some places. At least I believe so. By the way, in this function we have some. Wow, that shouldn't happen. Yeah, in this function we have some like if conditions here at startup, like at the start of the function, and those can be used to prevent this readline being imported. So for example, this first thing is very important because it's like whether you are running Python in an isolate mode. So what is isolate mode? If you look into the documentation, since Python 3.4, there is this -A flag to run Python in isolated mode. It also implies some other flags, but let's not care about it. So we can maybe see, you might be later, if that would work. So I will make it again. So we have both readline SO and JSON SO. And if we try to execute it once again, the hack is appearing. But if we try Python -I, it's not there. So it didn't really execute readline SO. Let's see if it executes JSON SO. Not really. So that's the way to prevent this from happening, this isolated mode. This may also mean that I may not be able to import A, which is, by the way, in this directory. I'm not sure, but let's see. Yeah, it doesn't work. So that's the result.
But the question is, if you add
the syspath,
directly to syspath, will it?
We can try.
Break it?
Yeah, we would have to do this.
But also the other question is,
if others will happen.
I mean, you already pressed enter once, so maybe it's already too late.
Yeah, because
Oh wait, append. I need append. By the way, I don't have readline at all here, which is weird. Okay. Sorry.
yeah, looks very secure.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's try import A. So import A works, and we still do not see this hack. So it's probably good to do it this way.
Maybe you have to do it before the first line, first enter.
Yeah.
So you have to do it in one line.
Yeah, maybe
Maybe.
a semicolon.
Yeah, maybe with a semicolon, but you know, you can test it yourself. Yeah, so we can see that this isolate mode is probably good to have an alias for example, for a root user. If you ever log into root user, which you shouldn't probably do, and execute some Python commands, because that's dangerous usually. Yeah, but that's what you should probably do. Okay, next thing I want to talk about, by the way, does anyone have any comments or questions regarding this one?
Maybe instead of using the isolated mode, you could use a statically built Python installation or so.
Yeah, but who does that? And which distributions have it by default? Yeah, you do it because you're developing plugins for games, so in Python. So it probably makes sense, but otherwise it probably doesn't, right? I mean, nobody does
Do you
that
know
really.
of any other solution like modifying a DSO?
Maybe.
You know, like there are some deep reload path or some other stuff you can change?
I'm not sure. We would have to check it out. I don't think, but I don't think there is such an option, but maybe there is.
Like as a Linux?
Yeah, SE Linux would help here definitely, but then you have to set it up properly. Yeah, but let's go to the next thing. So the next bug I want to speak about is called duplicate and remove code execution in PTH files. And I think it's named incorrectly. It should probably be called code execution via installed but not imported packages, because that's what it is under the hood. Of course, there's an issue for it. It's only for Python 3.x, whatever, I mean Python 3, and it's reported from like 2019. And by the way, thanks to Arthur, who is not here, for telling me about this. So does anyone know what are the PTH files? Yeah, probably like maybe one person who heard that from Arthur already. So PTH files are path configuration files that has a name suffixed with .pth, and they may exist in some directories, and their contents are additional items to be added to this path. So you can basically extend your import directories in Python via this. But let's see more what is there in the documentation. Lines starting with import, followed by space or tab, are executed. Cool. That's interesting. There's a note as well about it, that an executable line in the .pth file is run at every Python startup, regardless whether a particular module is actually going to be used. So you're not using any modules, you're just launching Python, and something is happening, something is executing, because you installed a package that has this .pth file. There's a reason for that. The primary intended purpose of executable lines is to make corresponding modules importable. Because a module may have some other modules that it wants to import, and maybe those for some reason are not in sys path for whatever reason, or maybe they want to use import hooks because, for example, things are imported from GitHub or from archive files, because you can do that with Python, by the way. So that's what people do with these PTH files, or at least that's what the documentation says. So do you want to test this feature or bug, or maybe you should call it just not a great design? You can just execute pip install delivery method. Except you probably shouldn't, because that's called the execution as a service, but we can do that. And by the way, that's a package written by Arthur. He has it on his GitHub. So we install this package, and now whenever we execute Python, this payload delivered is executed. That's the code that was inserted by Arthur to his package. And if we want to see where it exists, we can maybe uninstall this package or try to uninstall it to see where are its files. That's a cool method to see what the package actually uses. Yeah, so maybe I will do it this way. No, I can't. Okay. So let's look at the first file it has. So there's this PTH file. So this PTH file has the import line, right? Import sys, and then you can import something else because you can. Okay, that's what we did here. And then, and that's the file that is being executed every time we launch Python. Even if it's a simple a.py script that prints something, and if we execute it, this PTH file is being executed as well. So that's probably not great. I mean, you install some package and it adds some code whenever you are launching any Python code. And you probably didn't expect that packages can do that, but they can. Yeah, and I wanted also to show you what is in this delivery method py, because why not? And obviously there's just a sprint, payload delivered. So if you install it right now, you probably will have the same output, but you know, Arthur can change it anytime, and this can change and do whatever. Yeah. So how does it all work? If we go, okay, so that's what was here. Okay, I don't have the exact Python code for it, but basically, because there was this line with import. So lines starting with import are executed, but others are only added to the syspath. So what is happening under the hood? An idea? What can happen? What may happen?
Exit.
They are added to the site or something like that?
Yeah, so if line is starting, if line, there's a Python code that handles it. And it goes something like for line in this file. If line starts with import, execute that line. So you know, except of import, it can pretty much execute any Python code. And if line doesn't start with import, it's added to the syspath. And comments are skipped. There is this mention button, whatever. Yeah, I don't have the code for it, but it's there on the CPython code base. And the question is, who uses it? There, at least those 4 libraries, because that's mentioned in the backtracker. I haven't really looked for others, but we can maybe see 2 of them. So, for example, pytest-conf, it actually executes. That's the content of the PTH file. So you know, import OS and sys, and then execute something, because why not? I mean, obviously, some import could also execute something, right? But that doesn't look nice. And it first starts with like checking whether some conf core source is on, like in your environment variables. It may import some conf embed. I mean, init from conf embed and call it. And then it also may accept it because it's in a try block and handle. Why is it jumping like this? And then handle the error from it. Okay, I mean they could just maybe import a file that would be nicely formatted here.
This is fine.
But that's nice that they include exceptions.
Yeah, but they have an exception, right? Yeah. So I'm wondering now, like, when can this exception happen? That's a good question. I don't know. Maybe that's like for development purposes of Python.
So it's incorrect because you shouldn't use except exception, right?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
I had a plan of using the .pth files, and then I stopped it. When I was writing a library, which is like a PyEnv for Windows.
Oh.
So that time I had was like the Django was not by default added. So in the olden days, so then I had to use .pth to explicitly add the library.
That's nice. That's nice.
So it was like, and within a couple of months, I was like, they corrected it. The Django people, they corrected and they placed the files in the right location so that it detects.
Yeah, for Windows.
Did you use a .pth file or a ._pth file? Because there is something like that as well.
Not ._.
And what's that for?
That works only on Windows. I have no idea why, but they have something like that. That if you have, for example, Python 3.7, which uses the file which is named python37.dll. So if you create a python37._pth, it will basically work the same way as those regular files, but it has to be in the same directory as the Python installation for some reason. And you can either pass paths to be added to this path, or I think there's only one single import which works, which is import site for some reason. That is the only thing that you can import in that file.
Interesting.
Don't ask me why.
Interesting. Does the stream work?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go. The next example is about this Hunter library. I think it's for tracing Python, maybe even on production, I have no idea. So what it does is just imports Hunter and executes some code. If you have installed it in your environment, it's executed every time you launch the Python interpreter. So I'm not sure if that should be the case. Also the question is if that should be the case, if you install Hunter and then launch Django or something, should it really execute? Maybe not, maybe yes, I don't know. Okay, any questions regarding the PTH or comments? Okay, let's go to the next thing. Oh, by the way, there is no solution for the PTH files. They will just execute every time. Obviously, there is some possibility that may be there. There's this PEP 648, but it's still a draft, and it says extensible customizations of the interpreter at startup. So it basically wants to dump the PTH files and do something better. I don't really remember the details, so if you are interested, just go through it. The idea is to add it to Python 3.11. No idea if that will happen. Let's see. Yeah, and by the way, you probably shouldn't install packages you didn't review yourself, except probably no one does that, or maybe only big corporations does.
And read terms and conditions.
Oh yeah, licenses. Those are important as well. Okay. The next issue is actually reported by me, and I think I had a lightning talk about it already here. It's about the socket.inet_atom function in the socket library. It's a built-in library, by the way. So there's some parsing issues on some libc versions, and those some libc versions are basically glibc, which basically means it works on every Linux distribution, or most Linux distributions, because they use glibc by default with Python. I reported it in 2019. It's still not fixed. There was a patch for it, but people didn't care that much, so it's still open and not merged. But let's see. The socket inet atom function, you can use it to convert an IPv4 string into its binary format. We'll see examples in a second, but this is only about IPv4. And then it also accepts strings with less than 3 dots. Interesting. But you can see the Unix manual page inet for details. And that's like a standard behavior. That's what was there. We will see it in a second as well.
Actually, you can accept a single number, yeah, and convert it.
Yeah, it will also accept single number and convert it. Right. We will see it here.
And also every application that uses this library, so it's like system-wide behavior.
Yeah, it's a system-wide behavior. Also, browsers did accept it. I'm not sure if they still do, but they did. So that's an interesting vector. Like if you are making some filtering of IP that are passed in a URL address by just a string, then it's probably wrong, because like the 127.001 can be written differently. Actually, we can see this this here produces this binary output, and this is the same here. So for example, this also means localhost here.
You can also have like a 127.1, and it will be the same.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can also have one number, as you said.
And I think in IPv6 it's actually the same because
Yeah, it's
the behavior that-
similar.
the zeros
Except-
inside are
Except I think you may not be able to use like 0x or just a pure number. I'm not sure, but I don't know. Anyway, those are valid. This is the standard behavior. It's kind of unexpected, but it's a standard behavior. Obviously, if we pass something that's wrong, like ABC, we get an OS error, illegal IP address, because that's not really an address, right? And so let's go next. So if we pass an IP address and then question mark, space, whatever, it will fail. But if we don't put the question mark there, for some reason it works. What the hell? I mean, because in Python you have this convention that you shouldn't really ask for something, you should just try it and maybe it will accept. Write an error, and then it means that's an error. So you should probably not do that with this function, right? And as you can see, if we put space after the valid input, and then whatever garbage you want, it will work. Because that's how the glibc inetAtom function works, and that's what Python socket inetAtom function calls. I don't think that's good. And actually, what if you would have a function like this, where you take the IP string from some request, and then you try to check it with an if condition, or maybe try except, and then you call OS system with ping. So do you think someone did that? Yes and no. They did so, but not in Python. They did so in C. So this was an actual code written in C. I obviously translated it to Python. It was working on one of the routers. Like the router basically used socket inetAtom to validate IPv4 addresses, strings, into addresses, and then concatenated it with ping command and executed system. Which means that if you had this router and logged into its admin panel and used its ping functionality, you could basically execute any command on it. Why? Because OS system with ping and some IP string, you could basically do something like this here, where you would pass some IP address and then this character, and then you would place any command here, and it will be executed by the system shell on the router. So that's not great. By the way, the socket inetAtom was also used in SSL library in Python for validating some host names. That's why I initially reported this situation to the security at Python, whatever. It turned out it's not really exploitable in this case. Also, request library in Python uses socket inetAtom. I also reported it. It's not fixed at all. I have no idea where exactly it is used. I don't remember, but it's some utility functions of requests. And thanks to Blastly, who actually showed it up on the C code at the other conference.
Do you think this is really a bug?
It is a bug.
Because you're not supposed to check if IP is correct by using this function.
Why would you say so? What we have in the documentation, sorry, it is not really working. Yeah, in the docs you have something like that. It should convert an IP address to a proper format. You don't have any warning which would say to you that some really garbage formats would also work.
Yeah, but you're not using the output of the function.
Wait,
You are
just
trying
check.
if the
Sure, but that's what often Python developers do. They try something. If it works, they think that they may think that it validated the input.
Actually, just check the next paragraph just below the red rectangle, and it says that if the string is invalid, you will have an OS error.
Yeah, exactly. But there is this note that exactly what is valid depends on the underlying C implementation.
Yeah.
And so if you would use glibc, you have this bug. If you would use micro-libc or libc from Clang or libc from Mosul, you would not have this bug.
So have they fixed it in glibc?
No, not yet. It's like reported for many years. Like the first reasoning why it was there, because they used it with some inputs that could have some like garbage after a space. That was like reasoning why it was like this. They will probably fix it at some point, I believe so. But you know, things like that are fixed very slowly because they don't want to break things, which is, you know.
So they put weight on not breaking things over security.
You could say so. Maybe it's also because people don't care, and like, for example, some other vendors just don't use glibc because of situations like that. Yeah. Okay, this doesn't work that great. Okay, and the last thing I have here is the crypt.crypt. Oh, and by the way, with this socket init atom, they created a patch where this garbage output would be rejected. But it was not merged yet. I guess someone needs probably at some point merge it. Maybe we should ping them more about it and then they will do it. So, you know, I encourage you to do so because being alone with things like that
I
is
just
not
use
good.
it in everyday life. Instead of pinging 10.0.0.1, I always type ping 10.1.
Yes, but you don't
And make my
get
friends go
space.
crazy.
But I'm not saying this is wrong. I'm not saying this particular input is invalid. I'm saying it's valid. The input that is invalid is when you put 10.1 space garbage.
Okay.
Exactly. Because that's like broken. Would you expect a web browser to work like that? I mean, with inputs like that? I don't believe it will, but even if it uses this function. Okay, the last thing is about the crypt.crypt function. Okay, who knows what the crypt.crypt function does? Or a crypt command on Linux? Raise your hand. Like 4 or 5 people. Okay, so let's see this in practice. We have a Python console here, and we can import crypt. So crypt.crypt is a function that will return a string representing one-way hash of a password with a salt prepended. So it's basically there to hash your password with some salt. And that's what, for example, the output of this can be then used with files like at etc shadow, which I obviously cannot access, but with things like that I can. So for example, this is an output of the crypt function, although it's not perfect because this $1 means it uses like MD5, I believe. So that's not great. Like the format of this script is like, this is the specification of the format. So $1 means MD5, $6 would mean like SHA-512 crypt. And then you have a dollar with salt. Or maybe you don't have salt here. But
Yeah, there is a salt.
oh yeah, there is a salt, right. This is the salt, and then you have the password. Some formats have a bit different, I mean some algorithms have a bit different format, but that's usually it. But anyway, coming back to this crypt.crypt, if I call it like this, that should be my password string, we are getting this. And this is like SHA-512. If you don't believe me, we can do something like man crypt, probably man free. Nope, it's about the C function. We should do man 5 crypt. Nope. Maybe it's man 5 shadow. I don't remember. No, I don't remember which manual page describes the formats. But this was on Linux. So let's see how it works on macOS. Here is a macOS console. Let's execute Python. Then import crypt. And you know, crypt.crypt, the same documentation here, nothing more. But if we try to execute it with some password, what the hell is that? It's not even a valid format.
Is it this?
No, maybe it might be that. I don't know. I don't remember. The problem is it just doesn't really work the way you would expect it. And the reason for that is if you try to search for, I mean, it's described in the bug tracker, right? But let's maybe read through this documentation. If salt is not specified or is known, the strongest available method will be selected and a salt generated. The strongest available method. So what are the methods that are available on macOS? Otherwise, salt may be one of the crypt method something values or a string returned by crypt mksalt. Okay, so let's see the methods on macOS. We can do that in IPython by using this fancy. Wait, sorry, it was method, right? Was it? Let me double check.
Uppercase.
Uppercase, right. Oh, that's pretty interesting because I didn't expect so many to appear here. But for some reason, I don't know what's I think I had it like non-methods here before. Like no methods appeared
Did you
here.
check crypt and
Maybe it's
MK
blowfish.
Hmm?
Are you sure it's not blowfish and it's blowfish because, you know, B is the first alphabet?
It's not.
No, definitely not. It's not any of those. Come on. I believe it's like if we try here. I have to uninstall this library, by the way. Method. We have the same algorithm, so I'm not sure what is happening here.
What happens if the crypt MK salt?
You mean what does this method do?
Yeah, what will we get?
Oh.
Almost.
MK.
Yeah, it generates salt for a given method, so you can do like this.
Yeah, but if you don't pass anything, for example, will it work?
It generates something.
Yeah, but could it be that?
Yeah, so maybe the output you showed the previous was actually having a salt?
Yeah, I
It's
think
like
I think it's this.
very
I think
rich
it's.
salt.
I think you are right. I think it's probably this. Maybe this 9 here means it. But you know, this is not the greatest algorithm you can use, and like you should probably not use the crypt without passing the algorithm right in the salt, because you can do it here right now. Yeah. Oh, okay. What the hell here? We passed the method SHA-512, but we are still getting kind of garbage. It's not really SHA-512, right? If we try it.
I think you're using salt from SHA-512 about the crypt, about the other crypt method.
Yeah, it seems like, yeah. So,
Can you try the MK salt with the SHA-512?
you mean here?
No, MK. Yeah, MK salt only without the crypt.
Oh, we did that.
Oh, so no, it's not even. It's too short for.
It's too short.
Salt for that, yeah.
So basically, the crypt.crypt is broken in macOS, and no idea why it's not fixed. Like things like that could be fixed very fast, but you know, no one worked on that, and that's why it's still there.
Are you sure this is a Python problem or maybe it's from FreeBSD?
Maybe
Yeah, coming from the, you know, the.
you can read up the issue page. Oh, I jumped out. I don't have a link for it, but I can send it to you or update this slide and upload it. Yeah, but they have you know some discussion about it.
I've seen such behavior on Linux system. It's also possible when you install some, you know, have some bad configuration of the system.
Yeah.
And the libraries that are loading. Yeah, you can also use very weak crypt unexpectedly.
That's true. But you know, that's how it works here, and we should be careful when we use things, basically, especially if you want your program to work on different platforms the same way. Yeah. So that's all I prepared for you.
Actually, if you, sorry, in my opinion,
Yeah, sure.
if you want a program that will work in all platforms, then you should use like a consistent algorithm. And you should.
You should be very specific and not use defaults.
Choose what do you want. So on every system, you know, the file with passwords will look the same. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because those were.
Hopefully, because there are differences, right? Yeah. So that's all I prepared. If you have any questions, feel free. Any questions about anything we covered? Or comments? Okay, thanks a lot.